They're straightforward. Now when you look at second question, they're asking about discuss historical particularism as a critical view for classical evolutionism. Now when you look at classical evolutionism, one basic aspect is they spoke about unilineal evolution. That means savagery to barbarism to civilization. They spoke about unilineal evolution, and one more basic tenet of classical evolutionism was psychic unity of mankind. And when you look at this psychic unity of mankind, they say that whole of the cognitive ability and whole of the creative ability of the individual was common all across the world. And that is why we see that they have been moving from savagery to barbarism to civilization. So in that context, what do you observe? These are the two basic tenets which have to be seen, and one more aspect in the context of E.B. Taylor, if you observe, there was survivals and parallels. And more than anything, the major aspect that can be seen with respect to classical evolutionists, they were majorly armchair. They were majorly armchair, and they did not have any sort of fieldwork to be observed among them. Now, as a criticism to this, we see Franz Boas coming into the picture. And Franz Boas categorically says that you can never compare two cultures. You can never compare two cultures because each culture has a different history of its origin. As their histories are different, their cultures can never be compared. Now in this particular question, you will have to discuss about the basic tenets of historical particularism. And once you discuss about these basic tenets of historical particularism, one extrapolation of historical particularism that you see is cultural relativism of your chapter 2.1. Because in this answer, if you are not talking about cultural relativism, then you are missing some dimension. Because always remember, when there is a question of cultural relativism, I will have to talk about ethnocentrism, I will have to talk about the historical particularism. But whenever I see a question of historical particularism, definitely I will have to make a passing reference to cultural relativism of 2.1. Why? Because I see that cultural relativism is nothing but the two cultures can never be compared. That is one dimension that has to be observed. And historical particularism justifies why two cultures can never be compared, saying that both of them have a different history. Both of them have a different history of origin. Both of them have a different historic ideologies which are to be observed. Right? So that is one dimension in this particular aspect. But what is the criticism? What is the criticism of historical particularism? The criticism of historical particularism that you see is it is too much data oriented. It is too much data oriented. That is the biggest criticism of Franz Boas. He says that do whatever sort of research that is being done, that has to be evidence based, that has to be data based. But in the process of data collection, one biggest problem with participant observation that we generally observe in the context of Malinowski is what, my dear? It is time taking. Right? So that aspect has to be spoken. Now, next question it is asking about describe the evidences of food production and domestication of animals with special reference to Mehergar. Throw light on its significance. Now here, the reason why UPSC gave you Mehergar, that Are Babu, please understand we are talking about Neolithic. Right? That is the fundamental reason. Right? If Mehergar was not given, it is very, very difficult for us to interpret whether this question is of Mesolithic or Neolithic. Although we see that food production and domestication happens to be a categorical features of Neolithic time period, it is not Mesolithic, because in Mesolithic what happened? More of transitionary agriculture that I see, more of wild grain crop collection keeps happening. Now in that context what happens is I don't find complete domestication to be evolving in Mesolithic, it has majorly evolved in Neolithic. So that in this context what should be a structure? Straight away come to the time period of it. Right? Then once you discuss about the time period, talk about what kind of climatic conditions to be existing during that. Then once you discuss about the climatic conditions, talk about the tool technologies. Right? What kind of tool technologies in Neolithic? Majorly in Neolithic we find celt technology, grounding technology, polished tools. All of these are the basic dimension which are seen in the context of the Neolithic periods. Now once you understand the tool technology, then immediately talk about the food production dimension and domestication dimension. Because what happens, you see, Goutham Veera Child, G.V. Child talks about Neolithic period to be a revolution. In his book, What Happened in History, he fundamentally says that a Neolithic period is known to be a revolution. And when you look at why Neolithic period was known to be a revolution, it was fundamentally for these two dimensions, right? Because when you look at a neo-evolutionist perspective of G.V. Child, what is that? He talks about universal evolution. And in the context of universal evolution and the neo-evolutionist perspective of G.V. Child, please remember that has to be spoken here, right? It is not a mere archaeology question. You will have to definitely bring in the neo-evolutionist perspective to an extent here, right? So that is one dimension that you will have to remember in the context of whenever you are writing on Neolithic periods. Once you talk about that, then specifically speak about Mehergar. What is the characteristic feature of Mehergar? What is the characteristic feature of Mehergar? One characteristic feature. It is known to have the evidences of settled agriculture. It is known to have the evidences of settled agriculture. That is one very, very important characteristic feature of Mehergar which has to be written. So that is one dimension which you will have to mention at any cost. Then discuss about other dimensions. What other sites of Neolithic are there in India? Goutham, Gufrakal, right? So these different sites which are present, discuss about that. And definitely if you want, you can add a map. You can show a map of Neolithic. Always remember, for your archaeology, keep one thing is with respect to map, the other one that you need to keep is some diagrams of typo tool technologies, right? So remember that. Once you discuss about that, look at third question, that is critically comment on lifestyle diseases and their impact on human health. Now majorly we see this question was expected because of raising heart diseases in the context of India, right? Raising heart diseases in the context of India. Now we see the IHDS had conducted a survey saying that there is a genetic reason in the context of increasing heart attacks in India, right? There is one gene which is responsible for heart attacks and which is seen to be present in more than 30% of the population in India. Now because of the presence of this particular gene which is present in more than 30% of the population, we see the young individuals in India are more susceptible for heart attacks, right? Now in that context we fundamentally come across a question called lifestyle disease. Now one perspective which has to be definitely written from your 9.8, you know, this is a question from lifestyle, this is a question from epidemiological anthropology. Now when you have to write one perspective here, one definite dimension which you will have to discuss is epidemiological transition. Now when you look at epidemiological transition, you know that epidemiological transition as a phenomena was given by Umran. And when you look at Umran's understanding of epidemiological transition, we see that it has been transitioning from infectious diseases to lifestyle diseases. From lifestyle diseases, we have transitioned to the element of pandemics, right? This is what is the three-stage epidemiological transition that was given by Umran. And when we look at lifestyle diseases, it is fundamentally the second stage. Then there are multiple reasons for increasing in lifestyle diseases. One is with respect to the dimension of the cultural aspects. 2, the consumption patterns. 3, the sedentary lifestyle which has been seen with respect to the individuals to a larger extent. 4, in the context of the nutrition or the kind of diet which has been consumed. Now these days what are we seeing, my dear? We see that in the context of diet it is more protein based, it is more fat based composition, right? So when we observe that there are multiple changes which are existing, and more than anything what we see, the mental health condition is also one dimension which is problematic. So discuss about those aspects. Once you discuss about that, why are they asking you for the critical aspect of it? Critical aspect of it means you are fundamentally supposed to talk about the necessary suggestions and the necessary measures to be taken. Now here one biggest problem that will come into the picture is how are you going to manage it in an anthropological perspective, because most of us will tend to write some GS answer in this. Now the simplest dimension is bring in the aspect of epidemiological transition. Once you bring in this aspect of epidemiological transition and some dimensions of nutritional anthropology, you can manage this particular question by sticking it to anthropological perspective. Otherwise, what is going to happen? Same GS approach, right? The causes, in causes also social, economic, political, environmental. Kada, అదే అప్రోచే మనకు ఎందుకు